Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia. This is my mother, Ima, and we will start a conversation. How's it going?
How you doing? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Anyway, I must tell you about, I like where I'm living because it's like close to nature. Well, I had an encounter with nature the other night.
Okay.
What happened was I was about to go to sleep. I was about to say Shema, and looked down I'm at the dining room table, I look down at my feet, and I see a snake.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure. I think the cat might have brought it in from the garage. She likes to play in the garage. And she was fighting with the snake. And this snake, it had black, white, and red bands.
Oh, wait,
And
that's a
I
cup,
don't know.
not a. That's some kind of. That sounds very familiar. I think that's kind of poisonous.
Well, here's what happened. At first, I thought, oh my God, I saw the red bands. I thought, oh my gosh, don't tell me it's a poisonous snake. And to see the cat fighting with it, I thought, oh my God. I said, if I'm keeping the cat for my granddaughter. I thought if my granddaughter comes home and finds her cat was killed from a poisonous snake, I'm going to be dead, So first of all, I got scared. I jumped up. I spritzed some water on the cat to get her away from the snake.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just looking at this thing. I don't know what to do. So I call 911.
Yeah.
The police were of no help whatsoever. What happened was the 911 caller said, I'm sorry, we cannot send police out to trap a snake. So I said, what if it's poisonous? So she says, you're going to have to call a trapper in your area. So let me move this chair so I have like all these like lights shining in the back. So I Google on my maps, trappers and my area. And what do I get? Trappers Lodge and Restaurant, Trappers Resort, Trappers Fish and Tackle Store, anything but an actual trapper. So I'm wondering, what should I do? So I decided I'm going to be brave. I go to the garage, and I got a heavy shovel with a long handle. And I bashed the thing a few times over the head. I took a picture of it so I could look it up later to see if it was a poisonous snake and what kind it was. And then I took these long tongs, and it was dead. I killed it. I picked it up and threw it outside. So I blew up the picture I took of it so I could see exactly what the rings and what type of scales it had. And I Google, snakes in this area. And I'm looking at the pictures. And Baruch Hashem, I found the picture of the snake. Thank God it turned out to be not poisonous.
That's wonderful. Good.
But I was, man, especially when I saw the red bands, I was terrified.
Well, if anyone's ever listening and very curious, hold on one second, I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry. Jeez Louise. So a really strong triangle shaped head for a snake means it's poisonous. If it's more like a teardrop, then it's not. So
yeah, this was a very small head.
Yeah, so like it had a head like this, like a teardrop, then it's not poisonous. If it had a head like this, then it's poisonous, and be careful.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, because there's also a lot of pythons in Florida, no?
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, we have a once a year now. They have a python hunt in the Everglades.
Oh yeah, because they're invasive right now.
They give people prizes.
So
most pythons.
We're recording this now on July 4th. Do you remember what kind of July 4th stuff you had when you were a kid?
Da 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 da.
Thank you for wasting our time. What I was thinking of was, I remember when I was a kid, every Saturday the weekend of July 4th, every Saturday there would be these fireworks by the golf station, by the golf course, and then they would always have these great, fireworks, and it was always fun to watch. And I remember that as being like a July 4th memory.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when I got older and I left, during the summer, I missed that a lot.
Yeah.
So what did you miss when you were being a kid in July 4th?
Of course, like the when we lived on Fairview Avenue,
Yeah.
Gwen Oak Park, Gwen Oak Amusement Park, used to have fireworks. So we could come outside of our front door and we could actually watch a lot of the fireworks from that direction, from where Gwen Oak Park was. Then when I was, that summer, I think it was fourth grade going into fifth grade, my parents decided to actually go to Gwen Oak Park for the 4th of July. They treated us to the amusement park there. And we stayed there and watched the fireworks. It was very interesting. There was it was, what's it called? The Gwyn's Falls. Gwyn's Falls flowed right through Gwen Oak Park. So what they did was they had people sitting, they had on one side of it was like a stream. As a matter of fact, when you go, Milford Mill has that stream
Yeah.
that flows through it, and people mistakenly, like I did, a lot of times I thought that was called Milford Mill Stream, and then when I Googled it many years later, I found out no, that was actually called Gwyn's Falls, the Gwyn's Falls Stream, something like that, and and then they would do the fireworks on the other side of the stream for safety reasons, obviously. So that if there was any rocket that misfired, it would just go into the water. There'd be no problems. And it was spectacular to be up there close, watching the fireworks for once instead of from a long distance from our house. That was very, very special.
Did you feel any patriotism when you were a kid for July 4th and being an American?
I don't know about that. I was mostly just like I said, the barbecues, the social events, things like that. We didn't think in terms of we really didn't think in terms of patriotism. It was just a fun holiday.
What about, how was your father's reaction to it? Based off of what he served, or it didn't really matter to him?
He didn't express anything to us.
Okay.
But there was one program I was listening to on the radio that discussed the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And it was a very good program. It says people don't realize how these men and their families put everything on the line. Because the last line of the Declaration of Independence is, to this we, I don't know, not exactly sacred, but to this we pledge our life, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And they did. People don't realize what a chance they took. Had the Americans lost the revolution, every single one of those men, and probably even their families, probably would have been put in prison for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And these men for sure would have all been hanged, all of them. So they were really, this was the first time in history. Well, not exactly the first. Well, they had the Magna Carta, of course, where the nobles forced King James I think it was King James II to sign the Magna Carta. But other than that, there was never really such a revolt where people actually rebelled against the rule of the king. Because in those days, you had a lot of, the average person, the thought was called the divine rule of kings, that the king was actually God's emissary. And to rebel against the king was like rebelling against God. And this was the first time that so many prominent people, these men were really, this program went into details of what happened to each and every one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. They were very, very wealthy men, extremely wealthy. You're talking about the Bill Gates of their time. every single one of them, they lost their fortunes over the American Revolution. They wound up almost with nothing. Like, if some of them wound up totally penniless, some of them wound up some of them wound up not as rich as they were before, but but it was still
They
a
took a
struggle
hit.
for them.
They took a large
Yeah,
hit.
they did. They all did. Yes.
So I guess my question for you then is, when did you start becoming more patriotic versus, I guess, indifferent?
I'm very well. I'm very, believe me, I've always been proud to be an American, but as a Jew, I'm
Mm-hmm.
cautiously patriotic, because I can't help but to think about the German Jews, how patriotic they were and how proud they were of their country. When Germany, before the Holocaust, you're talking the Jews of Germany before the Holocaust had more civil rights and greater wealth and greater education than any other Jews in the world. And you had Jews that were professionals, that were serving in the government, that were, in high positions, that were very wealthy. And Germany was like one of the most highly industrialized countries of the world, and one of the most educated. I mean, the German universities were known for being like the grandest universities of the world. In fact, a lot of during the time of the Tsar, before the Russian Revolution, most people, wealthy people with money, would send their kids to the German universities to get their degrees. I was once reading a book by the Russian author Turgenev. It's called Fathers and Sons. And that's how the book begins. The book begins when his son is coming back from one of the German universities. I think it was Heidelberg University. And he goes down to the train station to meet him. And his son brings home a friend of his, a German friend of his from the university, who's a big nihilist, an atheist and a nihilist. And here, his Russian friend is from a family where they're, Russian Orthodox and, fairly spiritual people. And that's the thing of the book, is that there's this, this like fight, you might say, while his son's friend is there for summer vacation before he goes back to Germany. By the way, they're doctors. These boys, these young men have become doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And the young boy from Germany, his father's a doctor in Germany, so he's like taking the summer off before he goes back to Germany and helps his father with his medical practice. And so, like I said, it's an interesting book to read, to see the battles between these two schisms during the summer vacation.
See, it's interesting you say that, because there's a book that I read during Pesach, and it was a very short story book. It was fictional, but it had a point to it, where it was a book about these letters between this Jewish like this Jewish owner of these like tapestries and whatnot, communicating with his good friend in Germany in like the early 1930s until like 1938, 39. And it goes into detail of, people having a conversation, and then it slowly has the heat turned up, where, the German friend starts talking about like, oh, Hail Hitler this, Hail Hitler that. Like,
The German
don't
friend's not Jewish, or is Jewish?
He's not Jewish. He's not Jewish. And that's the whole point. It's a Jewish guy in America speaking to a non-Jewish German guy in Germany. And it's these letters where eventually gets like really intense, where it's like, don't contact me ever again. And it basically hints to the fact that, like, because of the communication at the time, the Nazi government was checking, the letters, and if there was any sign of anything not, coinciding with, the Nazi the Nazi, government, they would just throw these people into prison.
So these were authentic letters.
No, I said they were fictional letters,
Oh,
basically
I didn't say.
trying to show
Okay,
the example.
Uh-huh. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's interesting you bring the topic up because I'm in the middle of reading the book called The Choice
Uh-huh.
by Dr. Edith Eger.
Okay.
And it's about she was a Holocaust survivor, and she became a very prominent psychologist. She developed her own. She in conjunction. She started a correspondence as she was around the time she was getting her master's and her PhD. She started a correspondence with Viktor Frankl.
Oh, okay.
And talked and spoke to him about how she was so interested in his logotherapy, which was, of course, was a very different type of therapy that came on the scene, much more positive, therapy than Freudian. And she pioneered in the area of treating PTSD.
PTSD.
PTSD, yeah, post, and she said in her book that that in fact governments hired her. The United States government hired her to work with soldiers. She was invited to come to this worldwide convention of psychologists that in fact was meeting in Germany, and in fact in an old hotel where Goebbels and a lot of the Nazis stayed, and it was within eyeshot of Hitler's like castle, like that big beautiful castle. There are pictures of him on the balcony with different people and with Eva Braun, and that house, that big beautiful villa, was right near that hotel. And so at first she was very reluctant to go, and she was really worried about what her reaction would be going there, and would she break down? Would she not be able to conduct to participate in the convention? They wanted her to be the keynote speaker, and they also wanted her to talk about the therapy that she developed in working with people who have been through traumatic experiences. And so her husband said, if you don't go, then Hitler wins. And she did, and she went there. And that's I'm at the part of the book now where she goes to this convention and she addresses them. She talks about some of the cases she worked with in the book. First of all, of course, she goes into her childhood memories about what happened in the 1930s, and and also she goes into her experiences in the concentration camp, and then how they immigrated here to America afterwards, and all the details about starting over, marrying her husband, starting a family. And she said in one part of her book, she says that when we think of PTSD, they call post-traumatic syndrome disorder. And she says it's not a disorder. It's a normal human reaction that we all have to any type of to a trauma. It's not a disorder. As a matter of fact, it's a natural reaction.
Yeah. I always see human interaction, people are naturally reactive to what they grew up on, what they are a part of. I have this whole philosophy of like what really makes your choice, like what kind of choice do you have in the matter? Because if you think about it, you're only a reaction to your parents' reaction, which their reaction to this reaction. So there really isn't any choice you're really making. You're kind of coming along for the ride. But in my opinion, the only choice you have is whether you are in this world with a purpose or without. If you don't feel like you have a purpose in this world, then that's what's really going to get you down. But I think people do have a purpose, and it's difficult as it may seem sometimes. But it's true.
I have my cooperating teacher in my senior year, the cooperating teacher was the one like the when we did our student teaching in music education. And he said that there was a song that the kids were singing about, I forgot how the song went, forgot what it was. But he said that this song shows that you have a right to be here. God put you here for a reason. And because of that, you have a right to be here.
Mm.
And he wasn't Jewish. So,
Yeah.
he felt that every, God puts us here for a reason, and therefore we have a right to be here.
So again, that kind of goes full circle for what I'm trying to pull at you, really.
Well, she was saying in her therapy, her therapy was trying to get her patients to see how we don't have control over what happens to us, but we have the choice of how we choose to react to that.
Okay. But so that's again, I'm trying to really shift towards July 4th because it's like the holiday of the time right now, and I'm trying to see if there's
Well,
any.
maybe that's we talk about American independence.
I know. So
These
my
people
point.
these people came to the point where they made a choice.
Yeah.
They said, we're not going to turn over and play dead and, let a tyrannical king ride roughshod over us. We're going to stand up, and we're just, going to say enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I was listening to President Carter had a Secretary of State, trying to think what his name, Brzezinski was his name.
Okay.
And I was listening to an interview with him, and he was not American, by the way. He was Polish. He was from Poland. In fact, spoke with a slight Polish accent. And he said, Americans, if you look at the history of the United States, he says Americans are not. He said Americans are not initiators. Americans are reactors. And if you look at our history, it's even the American Revolution. The Americans put up with many, many years of the British passing all sorts of regulations and taxes and restraints, and they put up with it for years and years and years. And they tried to, they sent delegations over. In fact, when the Boston Tea Party, Benjamin Franklin was in the middle of trying to negotiate with King George about some of the very oppressive regulations against United States commerce, and he was, trying to get him to see reason, trying to compromise, trying to come to some sort of, maybe like I said, compromises, whatever, some sort of conclusion where we could both be happy. When news came to King George of the Boston Tea Party,
Gosh.
The story was that Benjamin Franklin closed his mouth, put on his hat, and walked away.
So then how was July 4th taught in schools when you were a kid? And did your friends feel any which way? And maybe I'm thinking of when you got older in your rebellious stages, or when you were in college, with all of this forget the government. I don't believe in the government, or all that stuff.
Vietnam, yes.
Yeah.
So
War. Did patriotism go away? Was it ever really
no,
there?
As a matter of fact, a lot of us felt that the reason we were demonstrating against the war was because we were patriotic, because we cared about the country, and we didn't like the fact that our own government was violating its own constitution, that this was an undeclared war. They never went to Congress like they were supposed to do for any type of declaration of war. It was supposed to be a quote unquote police action. And like I heard this one young man was arguing with his father. I was at this house where it really pitted generation against generation, because our parents' generation, they were from the World War II generation, where my country, right or wrong, and what's the matter with you? Where's your patriotic duty? Not backing up your government against a war, because they were used to World War II, where
Yeah.
the United States was momish attacked. Okay, there was no question about that war. Okay, it was either, either we fight, especially as Jews, either we fight this war, or guess what? We're going to be lampshades.
Yeah.
So, but and our generation said, listen, this is not the type of war where we're really being attacked. This is like this one young man at this house where I was. I think we had some sort of party or something, and he and his father were really getting into an argument. Quite honestly, the Vietnam War wasn't just fought in Vietnam; it was fought over the dinner tables in American households between children and their parents. And this young man's father was very upset that he was trying all sorts of ways to draft dodge. And he said to his father, I don't like a group of politicians playing chess with my life.
Mm.
And a lot of people, we were approached by people, aren't you patriotic? Yes, and this is why I am patriotic, which is why I am against the war, because I care about the direction that this country's going.
Did you ever have fights with your father about this?
Oh, you bet.
Like what?
My father did not like the idea that I was participating in these anti-war demonstrations. In fact, a funny thing happened. I had been to an anti-war demonstration in Washington, and I came back with my love beads and all these, end the war buttons and everything, and peace signs painted on my legs. And I come into the door, my father is holding an envelope with this big grin on his face. He says to me, did you join the Marines? I said, did I what? He says, this envelope came for you today. Oh, I take it, I open it up. It looks official. Like greetings, da da da, and you have been so be it, And then at the end, I read the whole thing, it looked like, oh my God, like what the heck is this? At the very bottom of the letter, it says, imagine this wonderful letter could be yours. Be a woman Marine.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was an elaborate advertisement from the United States government. Oh gosh.
So were there any quotes that your father said, or anything that he said that still rings in your head now, of what he felt the Vietnam War was?
That's the thing. That was the thing. They thought they really most people in my parents' generation were very much for the war. They thought it was the United States government trying to protect a country from becoming communist. It was they viewed it as a way of stopping communism, which I hate to say it, sometimes I hate to say it, but in a way, in a certain way, I feel like I was wrong in a certain way. Had we won the war, yes, it would have stopped communism. But it was the way it was fought. There was too much politically going on. It was like people were wondering, are we really fighting this war? I mean, it's like every time you turned around, we were giving the enemy an advantage in the battlefield. I was like, what, you would hear about all these different things that were going on, where the American troops were advancing, and they were about to really nail this place. They were about to win. And all of a sudden they're told, stop, hold your position. For what? And that's the worst thing. I mean, I'm no military strategist, but I've read enough about military history, and I know enough that an army has to either go forward or retreat. And to hold your position it's like signing your own death warrant. That's what the majority, that's where tremendous casualties happen, when an army is told just to hold their position.
So then I guess
it's not good in any battle to hold your position.
So the thing is, though, is that, like, the Vietnam War is similar to the Iraqi War and the Afghanistan War. You're trying to fight an idea that literally is ingrained in another people, and you have a group of people that like live and breathe fighting and don't mind doing it forever, literally. When America has this ideology of get in, get out. And I think that was another problem, especially with Afghanistan and Iraq, is that the exit strategy wasn't a good exit strategy. Afghanistan, they the Taliban swooped in as soon as everybody left, and they were fighting an infinite war. And in Vietnam, when it comes to communism, I mean, it's a failed ideology. As a matter of fact, it took over Vietnam. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Vietnam, even works under communism anymore, if I'm mistaken. I think it's it's a socialist state, communist state, but like they still handle capitalistic ideology when it comes to making money and what they need to do to keep their, country alive. That's why China right now is such an interesting phenomenon, because it's a communist country with capitalistic views, and they're successful at it. And that's why it's like sometimes when it comes to like the American ideology of like, we have to make sure no one else is, I guess, communist is like the main thing that I would say any American would understand that we're like against. And I think it's a failing option that doesn't really work. So why try to stop? Sorry, why try to stop it if it's going to end in failure anyways?
Because I think what's going on here is, well, during the time of the communist revolution in the early 1920s, when Lenin was promising everybody land, peace, bread, there was a German journalist, I don't know who his name was. I looked it up one time, forgot his name. He was on the coined the phrase useful idiots. And what happens in if you look at a lot of these ideologies that fail, especially communism, the people at the top do very nicely because, they're the ones that are taking most of the money and putting in the least effort on the guise of, we're going to take, from everyone according to his ability to everybody according to their needs. Now we in the government are going to take all this money that that you people have worked so hard making, and we're going to distribute it equally. Oh yes, we're going to take just a little bit for ourselves. Of course you trust us, don't you? And so this German journalist was writing about this, and he said, and at the bottom of the food chain, you get these useful idiots, which are young, idealistic people who buy the line, who bought the communist line, the land, peace, bread, and we're going to divide all this equally, and it's going to be a utopia. And they buy into this, not realizing that the people at the top who are really pulling the strings and really getting the money are just using them.
Yeah, but my point I'm saying is, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, why would America care about Vietnam and lose so many lives off of something that failed anyways, and even when it came to communism itself was just a disaster in its own right. So no matter how communist the Vietnam is today, it's still doing what they can to like survive and hold on to what they need to,
because like I said, the people at the top want that power.
But no, Ima, that's not my. I feel like I'm talking apples, you're talking oranges. We're almost running out of time, but the point I'm trying to make is,
yes,
I understand it was fear of the red that caused America to get into Vietnam. But now that it's been so many years since it's over, how much do you feel is the fear of the red actually a problem in another country, not ours, in another country, when it comes to what America needs to do with spending its time, money, and humans.
Listen, I'm not a political analyst. I'm sorry, but
I'm not asking for
when you
political
talk about
analysts. I'm
no, when you
asking for
talk
your
about
opinion.
Vietnam, look, when you talk about Vietnam and things like this,
Yeah.
why we pulled out, why we lost, why. I hate to say it, let's put it this way. My faith in mankind is shall we say not tremendous.
Okay.
And I think there was a lot of corruption that was going on. A lot of people were getting paid off. I think there was a lot of like I said, I think there was a lot of money stuff and
So
power
you're
that was
blaming
going on.
American government greed and probably private entities that wanted to benefit from this than actual really ideology, and they fed this anti-communist junk to the American public so they can eat it up and then feed into their war machine.
I can't say definitely. I have no evidence, but it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case.
Okay. That's all I want to know. Just trying to clarify.
Very few people know the actual title of that song.
It's
that song?
It's something March.
The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa.
That's what I was gonna say. You took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say that. It just so happens, just whatever. What did Tati think?
Our orchestra. Years ago, when I was in the
Yeah.
women's orchestra in Baltimore, the Orthodox Women's Orchestra, we played on the 4th of July at a nursing home, and that's what we played. That was our last song. We played The Stars and Stripes Forever.
Well, that's wonderful. They must have really enjoyed it.
Has that famous piccolo solo.
Piccolo?
Yes, there's a piccolo solo in the middle of it that usually at most concerts the soloist usually gets a round of applause when she finishes.
Okay, so I guess before we head out, what did Tati think of July 4th and America?
Well, when you kids were little, we used to go across to to the parking lot where 7 Mile Market used to be.
Yeah, I know.
To the other, and when you kids were little, we would go there and watch the fireworks. And then the first year that you were all away, you were all old enough to go away, and nobody was home. I asked your father if he wanted to come watch the fireworks. And he goes, I'm going to sleep. And I went over there and watched the fireworks by myself. And
didn't care for it.
It's
missed all the kids.
It's never fun watching fireworks by yourself.
Oh, yeah. It was nice. We saw the fireworks together. We were really enjoying it. We had a good time. I just, I wanted to do this, and then I got to go to sleep early. But yeah, I think I enjoyed July 4th. I really enjoyed those days where like we'd hang out and watch the fireworks. I think a few days we went to a parade. I think I remember that.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that parade. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember when Connie, before you were born, when your older sisters were little, we went to these friends of ours in in Silver Spring, and your father and this friend of his in Silver Spring decided they wanted to set off fireworks.
Oh gosh.
And they set off a couple rockets, and one rocket almost hit Connie.
Oh gosh.
Like landed just a few feet away from her. And because they didn't know, I mean, you need to be way out in a field away from people.
Yeah.
And they were just,
having
your father
fun.
And his friend. And I yelled, did I yell at your father? Oh man.
Was it worth it?
But to yell at him?
No, the fireworks.
Well, we decided after I finished yelling at your father, he said, you know what? Let's get in our cars and let's drive to the road where everyone's parked watching the fireworks.
All right. Hey, Ma. I love you.
I love you, honey. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.